Thank you. So, like it says, I'm an Associate Media Director at Forward. I'm also part of I-612, and before that, for years, I was at Carmichael Lynch. The one tricky thing about this, I do need the clicker, though.
Right on the seat there. Sorry.
Right on the seat. So, the three speakers, we didn't speak beforehand, so I didn't know exactly what they thought basic meant, and I wasn't sure what everything was, so there's a little bit of redundancy here. But this is a little too long anyway, and we're running late, so we can speed through some of that. This is what we're going to talk about, sort of how to think about it, then why you would do it. Some of that's been covered, but I'll just show you a few stats that you may not know. Also, what are the basics? That was definitely covered early, and that's only one slide. And then 4 advanced tactics, one of them, which I'll spoil, is Facebook, so Ashley covered that pretty good. And then, so DSP and DMP versus hiring a vendor. That's something you should probably think about, and I'll talk a little bit about that. It's a big topic, so I'll go very shallow into that. And then last things, just a couple things to remember. So, how to think about, the clicker doesn't work. Is there a trick? Oh, there we go. So a way to think about retargeting is kind of 2 ways. One with your customer in mind and one with data in mind. Now you guys are all search people. I will admit my background is in display. So I tend to think of more of the person and colorful and images, whereas you guys are definitely on the data side. But you do want to add value to your customer, right? Just because they were at your site, you don't want to just bombard them with banners for no real reason. I mean, are you reminding them of something? Are you giving them a discount? Or what's the reason to bring them back to your site? So think of that as you're kind of thinking about retargeting. And then, of course, data is the side that you guys know. But you can learn a lot from retargeting. So there is a reason why people are coming back, if they come back. So learn from that. Why did they come back? What was the message? What was the discount? So those are 2 ways to think about retargeting as you're starting to do it. Here's some basic facts. As you guys know, 90 to 95% of everyone on your site does not convert. That's a lot. So you want to get them back. Also, so 70% of people who were retargeting, are more likely to come back and convert, and they're more likely to spend. So those are 2 really compelling reasons to hit them with ads again and get your brand in front of them, get them to come back and remember you. So it pretty much is a no-brainer. Although I do agree, search is the first thing you should do, and it is the most effective thing to do, but this is the number 2, after search. This is the basic, this was covered. They come to your site, you give them a cookie, you hit them elsewhere. It's very simple. But can we do more? So that's kind of what I'm here to do, and yes, you can. So I'm going to talk about sequential, search, social, and dynamic. Search and social were already kind of touched on, so we will kind of skip through those a little bit. Sequential, that is something you can do to tell a story to your customer. Now so obviously we're talking about impressions. You're in front of your customer. Well, don't just use all those impressions saying one message, because you don't have to. So why not say something with the first few impressions, say something else, say a third thing, say a fourth, right? You have multiple impressions, so you might as well use them. You're paying for them. So like maybe remind them who you are, then give them a value proposition, why to come back, and then maybe really hit them hard with some kind of offer at the end. It's a really good way to move people through the funnel. Excuse me. You can also use it to test. So I've done things like this, where there was a number of different value propositions and offers that I was trying to test to see what would actually work. We'll use the impressions to test those things. Right now, you do want to be careful. You don't want to always have the same order, because then your data can be skewed, right? So you want to change up the order to make sure you're getting a good neutral test. But since you have these, why not test a couple different value propositions, a couple different price points, maybe different offers. Sometimes 40% off works better than 50% off. I don't know why, but it does. And you guys at search, you know that. You guys do that in search ads all the time. Use impressions in the same way. Search retargeting, this was covered, but if someone wants to buy all the things, then you definitely want to be in front of them, right? So how it works is, if I want to buy checks, and I don't go to the site, it's funny because somebody here works at that company, but they go to some other site. So the difference here is this is the third-party cookie. This is not you who's placing that cookie. That is the one difference. So you're going to have to buy that cookie from somebody else. But then you can retarget them, bring it back to your site, and sell it. So that is a big difference between what I showed in the beginning, which is you're laying the cookie, hitting them. This way, you're buying that cookie from someone else. It's called data. It's called third-party data. Whatever it is, somebody else placed that, so you have to buy it from them. They'll usually bake it into the CPM, but still, essentially, you're just buying that. Why would you do that? Well, site retargeting, by definition, is only people who've been to your site, right? I mean, that's the definition. So you can't increase your pool. Search retargeting, you can. That would be the number one reason to do this. You're increasing the number of people in your pool. So that would be the main, and that is the main reason. But it doesn't work as good as site. So that's just something to remember. Social. This was covered by Ashley very well. It's pretty popular, as we all know. This started only in last August. Were you able to do this? When someone was on your site and then you can hit them on the web or hit them on Facebook. This started in August. As you can see, people who are doing it, it's grown tremendously. This was a case where I was actually doing research for this particular deck, and these guys hit me with an ad within 5 minutes. And this is what it was, which was a pretty good ad for being on Facebook. And for this kind, it was perfect for this discussion. Now, there's still a ton of opportunity. Most people on Facebook who are marketing on it are not doing this. So there's a ton of opportunity. And one cool thing that was just announced yesterday, these ads are starting to show up in the feed, not only on the right. So that's a brand new thing. Also, there are some very compelling stats on Facebook for retargeting.
Mobile feed too? Do you know?
I think right now it's only web, but it'll change very soon. And actually, all of Facebook's about to change anyway, so everything's going to change within the next month. Everything. Well, the feed will change.
Oh, okay.
Within the next few months, the whole feed will change.
Freaking me out.
It's true. Actually, the whole internet's going to change. But that's kind of the secret. So these studies are so new that I want to take them with a little bit of grain of salt, right? Because this has only been going on for 6 months. But the early results are really, really good. Because you can personalize it so much, like Ashley showed, and you can do so many different things. You can test so many variables. Facebook advertising is something I highly recommend, and a very good way to do it. And it's cheap. It's much cheaper than regular retargeting. So it's kind of a two-pronged win-win, because it's cheaper and it works as good, if not better. Dynamic. This was touched on by a couple people. This is a very, very, especially if you're retail or you're selling multiple products, this is something you really should be doing. In this case, I went to Nordstrom's to look at something that for sure I wouldn't get hit by chance. This is a $1,300 pair of shoes with flowers on them. Within a couple hours, I had that pair of shoes in front of me. I mean, that's obviously not by chance. But if somebody's interested in that, then they're like, wow, you know, I really do like those $1,300 pair of shoes. I'm going to go back. They work really, really well. Up to 6 times better than regular ones. I mean, if you have a site that can do this and you have products that this makes sense for, this is what you should be doing. Absolutely no doubt about it. In this deck, I don't really get into the hows, so the sort of getting into okay, how do you set this up? It's basically setting up a dynamic pixel usually, and then that's talking to the banners. And I can certainly set you guys up after. I can talk to you about how you do that, or who to talk to about doing it. But this is again a no-brainer. If it makes sense for your site, you should be doing this. So a DSP, I don't know if you guys know what a demand-side platform is. This is basically the self-serve model. And a DMP is a data management platform. This is a huge topic, and probably you could do a whole one of these on this topic. But here's kind of the pros and cons of both, because there are pros and cons of both. If you're hiring a vendor, basically you're giving them money and saying, do my retargeting. Tell me what my ROI is, but that's kind of it. If you're doing a DSP, you're doing it all yourself. The advantage there is it's much cheaper because there's no margin. There's no markup at all. You're buying directly on the open exchange. You're paying what that impression is worth. Because basically you're paying for the cookie, right? That's what it is. You know that cookie goes by, they were on your site, you want to hit that person, so that impression with that cookie, that's what you're paying for. An outside vendor, it's the same cookie, they're just adding the margin, right? So that's the big difference if you want to really break it down. You also have a lot more control over what you're doing here. because you're the one buying. So you can say where you want to appear, how many times. I mean, there are some, you can tell your vendor, I want to set a frequency cap of 10. I only want to be seen twice a day. But this one, you're controlling all yourself. So it's kind of like if you paid a search agency or you're doing it in-house, right? It's kind of a way to think about it. That way is way easier though. It really is, and sometimes that's worth it. If you don't have time, this one you have to, it's a lot like a search campaign. You have to get in there, you have to watch it every day, you have to adjust. It takes a lot more work. So just some things to think about if you're trying to decide. There's a lot of people in this space and they can all do different things. I didn't want to really get into who's better, who's why, because it's kind of opinion. But there's a couple links for you if you want. Later you can definitely go and check them out. So that was a lot of stuff. I'll do a quick recap. So think about it in terms of customer and data. Think about sequential as a way to test. That's a great way to test because you can test offers, value propositions. It's also a way to move people down the funnel. Search retargeting is a way to increase your pool because, like I said, by definition, site retargeting is only people who've already been there. You can't increase that number unless you go outside of there. Social is new, and it's a very effective method. It's cheaper. Early results are great. I would advise trying it, at least trying it, because it's so cheap. And then dynamic ads, if it makes sense for your company, for sure do it. Now it does cost a little more, so I will say that because you have to pay a little extra for serving. There's setup, there's some extra cost there, but it's definitely worth it. And then I do have one more slide that has a lot of takeaways, but I'm not going to go through them all. But this one is just a huge slide with a lot of stuff. So this is definitely for your takeaway, and this is kind of best practices and things to think about that I didn't cover, like at the top, privacy. Privacy is a huge issue. You don't want to just, because you're retargeting people, so you're following them around. You have to give them an out. You have to let them, if they don't want to be retargeted, you have to let them out. You also have to let your legal team know. They have to think about it. What if somebody sues you because they think they're getting retargeted too much? So these are all different things. I'm certainly not going to go through them all, but they're all good things to think about and things to, if you want to get into this world, I highly advise you, and certainly can talk to me afterwards, to think about almost every one of these. You always want to A/B test. You plan for somebody to break it. Plan for people to bitch about it. So they will tweet at you, why are you always hitting me with these ads? Have an answer, have a response. So definitely this deck, I believe, is going to be available?
Yes. Yep, slide share by Monday.
Perfect. So these are all things to keep in mind. Try to keep it brief. I think I did. I was in my 15 minutes, I believe. I think that's it. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Greg.